Republicans infuriated a grieving conservative father attending the State of the Union when they insensitively heckled President Biden at a critical moment. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe and enjoy the video. So the party of Jesus Christ and family values once again publicly abandoned those virtues for the sake of spite and partisan politics. What am I talking about? Of course, I'm talking about the State of the Union address. And they did that multiple times throughout President Biden's speech. And there are many standout moments. But this one that we're about to discuss is relatively unique in that it was pointlessly cruel. It didn't really serve any sort of nefarious agenda. It wasn't weaponized disinformation. There wasn't any real partisan political gain. It was just an exercise in abject cruelty. And it may very well have backfired in terms of optics because it at least pissed off one person. And that one person is probably the one who matters most because it was the grieving conservative father about whom the story was. So we're going to play the clip. But this is President Biden talking about the opioid or fentanyl crisis in the United States. We're seeing a surge in addictions, and it's correlated to the situation at the southern border. And Republicans have sought to weaponize this situation against President Biden since he took office, right? Even though the enforcement, the funding, the policies under the Biden administration are virtually identical to those under the Trump administration. The only real difference is, of course, the fact that under Biden, DHS and ICE aren't enthusiastically separating children and throwing them into cages after separating them from their parents. And we'll get into the fact checks about that, don't you worry. But I want to play this clip because he's telling the story of a woman, a 20-year-old woman, who died of a fentanyl addiction, and her grieving conservative father is in attendance, okay? So let's play the clip and let's see how Republicans respond.
Joining us tonight is a father named Doug from Newton, New Hampshire. He wrote Jill, my wife, a letter, and me as well, about his courageous daughter, Courtney. A contagious laugh, his sister's best friend, her sister's best friend. He shared a story all too familiar to millions of Americans and many of you in the audience. Courtney discovered pills in high school. It spiraled into addiction and eventually death from a fentanyl overdose. She was just 20 years old. Describing the last 8 years without her, Doug said, "There's no worse pain." Yet their family has turned pain to purpose, working to end the stigma and change laws. He told us he wants to start a journey toward American recovery. Doug, we're with you. Fentanyl is killing more than 70,000 Americans a year. Big, you got it. So let's launch a major surge to stop fentanyl production and the sale and trafficking with more drug detection machines, inspection cargo, stop pills and powder at the border.
Okay, so if you did not hear that, that was President Biden recounting the story of Courtney Griffin, the elderly gentleman sitting in the gallery was her father. And when President Biden concluded the story and mentioned how fentanyl, cases are, 70,000 per year, Republicans began to heckle him. And they were booing him, and they said, "It's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault." And now, as a reminder, Joe Biden, like that father in the gallery, has had to deal with the death of children. Beau Biden, in the past 7 years, and then he had a daughter who died 30 or 40 years ago in a car wreck with his first wife. So Joe Biden is the very definition of a grieving father. Now, that is wildly insensitive for Republicans to do, of course. Can you imagine if the shoe were on the other foot and it were a Republican president recounting the somber story, a Republican president whose children or who has suffered the death of a child, and Democrats reacted this way? Can you imagine the reaction from the right, and actually much of the left. Can you imagine how CNN, the New York Times, and other places, it wouldn't just be Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax complaining about their behavior. It would be mainstream centrist outlets as well. Goes to show you the asymmetry of how things are handled here, because Republicans, even though they profess to be the party of Jesus Christ and family values, I guess they just get a blank check to react however they want. They reacted so poorly that Kevin McCarthy, who's no fan of Joe Biden, you could see him behind Biden trying to shush his caucus, a caucus over which he has very little power. He still felt like they needed to shut up, right? So that's how they reacted. Well, what did Courtney Griffin's father, Doug Griffin, what did he think? Well, the father of the fentanyl victim says that Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was the primary heckler, crossed a line by heckling his daughter's story at the State of the Union. The father of the 20-year-old woman who died of a fentanyl overdose said that Marjorie Taylor Greene crossed the line when she heckled President Biden's telling of his daughter's story at the State of the Union. Doug Griffin told The Independent that he found it really nasty when the controversial GOP congresswoman interrupted the president's address during what should have been a moment of reverence. I was startled, as that was the only time during the entire speech that he was heckled in that way. Which, not really, but I guess in terms of just sheer nastiness, yeah. It was really nasty in what was a time of reverence. I think she crossed the line. Mr. Griffin, a Republican, this man is a Republican, said the outburst highlighted the constant battle to get Republicans and Democrats to work together to tackle the opioid crisis, as he urged lawmakers to stop treating it as a partisan issue. And of course, it's Republicans treating it as a partisan issue. Let's call a spade a spade. Democrats are not blaming the opioid issue on Republicans. As a matter of fact, they're trying to address it. Republicans, however, because they don't care about governing, are trying to simply weaponize it against Joe Biden. Now, I just want to do some quick fact-checking here because, of course, people will say, well, Republicans were right to heckle President Biden because the opioid epidemic is his fault. Well, it's happening on his watch, to be sure. Right, and as president, he does have command responsibility. There's no doubt about that. But the question is, what is he doing different? Or what is he not doing, in your opinion, that is causing this situation to occur? And the fact of the matter is that Joe Biden's policies, his border policies, are substantively no different from the Trump administration's border policies, except the fact that, again, he's not separating kids from their parents and throwing them in cages. So, according to PolitiFact, border security funding under Biden is comparable to funding under Trump's administration. Border Patrol staffing has remained fairly consistent despite long-term hiring and retention challenges, and border immigration laws and policies continue to be enforced under Biden's presidencies. Despite halting the building of additional miles of barriers, right, they stopped the Trump wall, Biden's administration has used previously appropriated funds to repair barriers and close gaps that have become popular areas for immigrants to cross into the United States, okay? So the fact of the matter is that you can blame or you can criticize President Biden for not doing more, if that's your opinion. But to say that he's doing less than what Trump did is simply just not true. So we need to be really accurate with our criticisms, okay? We don't need to unfairly criticize President Biden when there's no reason to. And as far as, the broader story about, Republican incivility, again, this is the point. Democrats have their faults. And again, there's plenty to criticize here. But the Republican Party is not a loyal opposition. They're not a good faith opposition. They're not interested in helping President Biden govern, right? They're not proposing ideas and trying to work with him. They're simply trying to attack him, even in moments like this of just abject cruelty. In front of a grieving father, they tell a grieving father, and also the President of the United States, that it's his fault that sons and daughters are dying. So, anyway, food for thought. We're going to be covering other moments from the State of the Union as well as some recent congressional hearings, which are really important because there's a lot of meat for conversation. So, stand by.
Hey, you! Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, and I hope that you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And if you absolutely hated the video, the best revenge for you is also to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. That'll teach me. If you want to share an opinion or share some feedback, go ahead and leave a comment, all right? 2023 is a year of change, hence the aggressive rebrand and commitment to new content. Inspired by my friends Luke Beasley and STV Philly, my personal goal for this channel is to hit 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'm hoping you'll do me a solid by spreading the word and the videos to potential fans and hate watchers alike. And in the meantime, we'll be pondering politics again with you very soon.